Start recording here. Okay, so I'm going to add a super spray, and that's just under particle systems. So it's just under the create panel, under particle systems. And so super spray, and I'll just start in the middle and just click and drag. And the emitter doesn't render. So it doesn't matter how big it is. It just needs to be big enough to where you can select it. So it's not totally inside something or whatever. And there it is. Okay, I'll right click to, and then I'll go to the motion of the modify panel to get back to these parameters, right? So probably the most important thing, we'll get to these in a sec, but particle generation is probably the most, where you're going to start. Okay, it's going to be the most common thing to start with. And so the number of particles can be controlled in one of two ways, by rate, and this will be 10 particles per frame, or a total. Right, so I have 100 frames in my default screen here. So we have 100 particles, or we have 10 particles per frame. However, we also have the timing when the emitter will start and stop producing particles, how long the particles will live, right? They have a life, and how long they'll be displayed, right? So they can have a longer life than their display as well. And then there's a lot of them have a variation, and usually it's in frames or percentage. And so let's look at speed. Okay, so right now the default is we have from 0 to 30, we have 10 particles per frame popping out of here, and what we and they're going at 10 frames. 10 units per frame is its speed. Okay, so I'm going to put a variation of 50 on that, so 50%. So now they should be coming out at a different, well, more random anyway. Okay, also they're coming out in a straight line, right? So as far as the timing goes, we have it set up. Let's give them a life of 100. So I can see them the entire time. And so we can have that. Let's slow them down a little bit as well, so I can see them a little bit longer. They're coming off the, can zoom back out a little, I guess. And so they just keep going straight up. That's nice. Okay, let's put it out here somewhere. Okay, now back under the first rollout, the basic parameters is where it can, how it emits them, right? So off axis and the degree and how it spreads. So off axis is the direction, right, that it's pointing. So usually I just leave that alone, but the spread allows it to not shoot it up in just a straight line, shoot the particles out there. And so let's go 30 degrees here. So now maybe in the front view, it's a little easier to see, but in the left view, I can see that that's not helping in that degree, but it fans it out at a 30-degree angle from the axis. So it's actually 60 degrees. So if I go 90, that's 180, right? So that spreads it out just completely 180 degrees from that. So if I wanted really 30 degrees, I go 15 on each side, okay? And then the plane, that's, so if I go another 30 degrees on that, that's actually how much that's the actual angle of spread that it has. So right here, 15 and 30, that gives you like a nice cone of spray. So this would be like good for a hose or something, or a flashlight, or I don't know. I don't think a flashlight spits out anything, but some sort of hopper. Okay. And off plane also, that's just a rotational thing. So actually the spread, if I look in the top view, I can see that that spread is 30 degrees, but if I go one, all I need is 90 actually, and it spreads it in both directions for 180. So that gives me a complete cone of influence at a 15-degree angle, or really a 30. So that's a 30-degree cone, conical kind of thing. So let's go up a little bit more. Okay, so now I can see the speed change a little bit better. So I can see particles coming out. Some are faster than others. And so that's more like, I don't know, fireworks or something. So with that low number of particles, that's what it is. So let's see how it renders, see what's going on here. give it a render and see what we're doing. Well, we can see the particle size is well, what it is. And we can see the spread and the color. We don't have any materials on it or anything. It's just these, what are they though, right? So we also have the emitter size, right? So we can increase the size of the emitter there. All right, so back to the particle generation rollout, we have the size of the particles as well. So let's make that a little bit bigger and render it so we can see what the particles are. And now we can see they're triangles, which is nice. So we have to consider that particle systems can generate a whole lot of geometry in very little time, right? You can crash the system pretty quickly just by typing a number, right? So there are ways to remediate the load that it puts on the computer just by changing the type of particle it is, right? So a triangle is pretty easy to render, and so it can do things pretty fast. And if they're small enough and they're going fast enough, it's tough to tell what it is or that it's a triangle instead of little particles of smoke or something. So, and we can also change the variation. So let's go 30% variation on that, re-render. And so we should see different size triangles throughout. So that's nice. Okay. We also have, this is interesting too, towards the bottom of where the emitter is, we have smaller particles. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell in a perspective viewport, but we can see that the particles are growing for 10 frames and then they'll fade for 10 frames to the end of their life. So let's change their life back down to maybe, I don't know what frame I'm on here actually, frame 35. So let's go 20 for the life of the particles and re-render that. So they should start fading in size. Yeah, so I can see some that are dying and they're smaller, right? So we can grow them and shrink them or fade them away as they die out. So that works well for like smoke or fog or other kinds of ideas, phenomena. Okay. Particle type. So that pretty much covers the generation rollout. Let's try the particle type rollout. In here we can, right now these are standard particles, triangle, special. I don't think I can change the special. Let's render that. Oh yeah, they're just 4 planes stuck in a configuration, which can be useful for certain like transparencies and things like that. You can make them look like snowflakes, or you can make them look 3D with that, without a lot of geometry. So that's nice. It's a special. Constant is, I'm not sure what constant is. Yeah, they're just circles. Now what's the difference between that and, well, that's just, yeah, 6 point. Well, you can go through them all. There you go, 6-pointed stars. Facing is interesting because all the particles, all the particles in this will be, will face the camera. So as you have a camera animating around something, they'll rotate to be perpendicular to their face. Will always face the camera, in other words. So that's pretty useful when particles are tumbling around and things, and you want it to still not lose, if they're two-dimensional, well, they are two-dimensional, that they won't lose their the effect. So they're just squares that always face the screen, the camera. Okay, then we have the last two are actual 3-dimensional particles. So here are tetrahedrons, and I think we can change, no, there's not much else you can do with those. And of course, spheres. There's a variety of spheres. They're low poly spheres because there's lots of them. Okay, now those are just standard particles. Metaparticles are very useful. when you want them to kind of stick together. So let's re-render just the way it is, and you can see that metaparticles will, if they're close enough to each other, they'll fill in the gaps. So this will act more like liquid when you have metaparticles on. Works pretty well. And you can increase or decrease the tension. So if I lower the tension as much as it can, it should fill in more of the gaps. So now we have more of the distance between the particles filled in. Okay, and then we can have a variation on the tension also. So that's usually a good idea. 10 to 15% or so, that ought to work. And put the tension to 0.5. See what kind of variety we can look with that. So yeah, have a glob in the center and we get some globs out on the end. Not bad, not bad. So those are metaparticles. Now the interesting part here is instanced geometry, right? So I got to have some other geometry on here. So let's look at Teapot, of course. Let's use a small Teapot and go back to the emitter and instance geometry. I pick the object. I'm gonna have a Teapot. Okay, any offset? Nope. Let's just look at what it renders to. They're a little big, so let's knock down the size a little bit. I'll render again. Okay. So it's instanced, meaning I can change the idea here. Let's go with 1 for radius, so small Teapot. And then under, I still think I can put a variety of size. Yeah. So there should be a bunch of teapots that are different sizes here. Yeah, so we definitely have, those could be fading for all I know, but I believe that the variety can, let's see, let's put 5 for the size with 50% variation. Render that. Yeah, so we can vary the size of the teapot as well as control the size with the size of the particle. So that's instanced geometry. So anything you model, you can make multiple items of it with the particle system. All right, instance geometry. Rotation and collision, pretty self-explanatory. You can model collisions also somewhere in here. So you can set how much they're spinning and how much variation is on that. So that could be very useful as well. Right now it's at random, but we can also have the direction. If we were animating the emitter, then we can have the spin be a function of the position of the emitter itself. All right, so and here's the object motion, and so we can set how much influence the object's motion has on the motion of the particles as well. And then there's a bubble motion where we can have them act like bubbles instead of just spewing out in a constant speed or even a variety of speed. And lastly, and you can save the presets, but lastly, the spawn. If you can have the particles die after they collide with something, or you can have them spawn more particles after they do hit something. So how do you know if it hits something? So that might be the next problem. So let's see. Let's go back here and make something to collide with these particles. How about a box? And I'll draw the box in the, I'll zoom out, draw the box in the, I'll move it over here so you can see it this way. Rotate it. Maybe lower the, and it's always good when you're changing parameters, put the frame back at 0, because it will have to recalculate the position of the particles and it may crash the system. Let's center that up a teeny bit better. Okay, and then needs to be over it. All right, so here's a nice box to collide with the particles. Now it's not going to, I mean, that doesn't do it. So they're just gonna go right through the box as if nothing happened, okay? So we have to use a, what do you call them? Space warp, yeah. And so we can use forces, such as gravity and things like that, or deflectors. So we can actually add just a regular deflector in there, or a U deflector, which is what I want to do. I'll just put a U deflector out here.
What's the difference between a deflector and a U deflector?
Yeah, you'll see this in a sec. Well, a deflector is a plane, okay? An S omniflect is a spherical. A P omniflect is a, I don't remember. But anyway, the U deflector allows you to pick an object as a deflector. So it's like, it uses, well, I'll just show you. So here it is, and I'll just pick the object and I'll pick my box.
So a U deflector you apply to an already created object, while a deflector is a plane in itself?
Yes.
It creates a plane?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So we have spherical, U omni deflectors will deflect in every direction. So we have 2 U deflectors, 2 S deflectors, a regular deflector, and what is the P? Deflect, omniflect.
So how does it know what to deflect?
Well, I just picked it. So I don't know if you saw that here in the modify panel. So you can just pick object, and I've already done it. So I have box 1 right here. So you can just pick an object and click on it in the screen, and that's how it knows that this guy here. That still won't do it though, okay? So if I run that through, it's just gonna go through. It still doesn't have any idea. There's no connection between these 2 things, this deflector and that particle system. It doesn't, they don't know anything of each other, right? But you might have guessed that with the select and link tools, there's another one. It says bind to space warp. So that link right there allows me to click and drag from the particle system and bind it to a space warp, in this case, a deflector. So I drag it in there, and now I can see that the super spray in the modify panel has a U deflector bound to it. I don't know if that answered all of your questions or not. Are we okay with that?
Possibly. Okay. I've yet to get this far in on my own panel or whatever. I've yet to be able to make this yet. Okay.
So far I've made 3 things: a box, a super spray, and a U deflector. Okay. Now, I can back up and we can just do a normal one, but this is probably the most useful one. Anyway, so what I did is lined them up, lined the box up with the particles, the super spray, and added a U deflector in the scene. And I picked the box as the U deflector's object, and then I bound the super spray with the bind to space warp tool, right? So I click and drag from the particle system to the individual deflectors or forces, right? These forces that we can act like wind and things, and pushes. Force is basically just, you know, as you might expect, something that will move the particles away from its normal motion. So, okay. Anyway, so far okay with that setup, because they're pretty much all that way, right? You bind the forces or deflectors to the particle system, and the particles will react accordingly. So in this case, in this setup right here, there's one extra little piece of complexity, and that is that I'm using a U deflector, which uses an object that's renderable. These deflectors normally are not renderable, so that's the difference. Is when you want to see the particles bouncing off of something, then, well, I mean, I could put this box and then just line up a regular deflector on it, and that would work too, but this is nice. All right, so when I'll use my front viewport to take a closer look, and when I scrub my time, I should see the particles bouncing off the box. You can see them bounce. Now, with that deflector selected, so that tool, the bind is also a select tool. I'll just move my select tool now. I can set up how bouncy it is. 1 is the highest amount. No, it isn't. It used to be. So now I have ultra bounce, super bouncy. I'll put that back down to 1. 1's pretty bouncy as it is. With I always like to put a variation on that. Maybe not 0.5%, maybe 25%. And there's chaos in there. There's also friction, and you know, when it hits that, it might slow it down if I had friction. Inherit the velocity. So if I'm moving that box, if the box is moving along, it would increase its the particles' reaction to it. So those are some settings in the deflectors. So there they go.
Where are the deflectors located again? I'm sorry, I just got my particle system going.
Yeah, it's what is that called? Space warps. Second to last.
Okay, got it.
Good. Glad you're asking. Okay. So let's add another deflector, like well, actually, let's add a force. So go to forces. There's all kinds of forces. Gravity being a kind of a natural one, right? Gravity is not a force, by the way. It's an attraction. Anyway, technically. Okay, so in maybe the top view, I'll just add well, it doesn't matter. I'll just add a gravity next to this force here, or the deflector. So click and drag, and you can see the arrow pointing down. Gravity tends to pull us towards the Earth, towards the center. So that's good enough. And then I'll just bind the spray to the gravity. So click, drag, drop. There we go. So now let's see what kind of effect that has. Now the particles are generating out, and gravity is so strong they don't even get to my box that I so diligently prepared, right? So that's pretty good. So
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. With the spray and the deflector, do you link the deflector to the spray, or to the spray to the deflector, or does it matter which way it goes?
Spray to the deflector.
Okay.
So you're binding the spray to that force or the deflector, right? Now I have two things. I have a gravity force and I have a deflector, and I clicked from the super spray to each of those individually.
Okay, so so the spray to whatever you're, okay.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. Keep forgetting these are teapots. Let me make that radius just a little bit bigger. Okay. What am I going to do now? Oh, so yeah, these teapots aren't making it to the box to hit the box, right? So how about I just increase the speed, right? I had decreased it before, so let's increase it like quite a bit. It was at 10, so I'm going to put it at 20. Let's see what that does. Okay, so some of the particles are making it to the box and some aren't. So getting there, right? I'm not sure what I'm trying to do here, just demonstrate, but there you go. Now, oh yeah, and then the other problem is, you know, in a macro view of it, they just keep falling, right? So how about, that's a good job for a regular deflector. How about just deflector, right? And this is a planar one. I thought the P on deflector, I'm gonna have to figure out what that is. I don't even know. So I'm gonna make a big deflector here because I don't know how far these particles can end up, right? And then, not too big, I hope, because I need to bind, get the bind tool, bind, and then drag it, and then I have to go onto an edge, right? So I gotta have it in my view to drag from the super spray to that just plain old garden variety deflector. There we go. So now I hope to, okay, so I might have a problem because the super spray is in the floor. Well, I don't know, it's actually at the floor. It's at 0. So I might get a couple particles actually bouncing off of it immediately and going down. I don't know. Maybe not, but let's see. Guess not. So now I can see the particles bouncing along the floor as they go off and die.
Is that what that gravity is doing? Is bouncing it off the floor?
The gravity is pulling it down. The floor, because it's bound to the floor, it's bouncing off the floor. So perhaps.
Oh, there's a plane there. Okay. Wait, that's a deflector.
Yes, that is not a plane. It is a deflector. It won't render, right? So that's my view. Right? The only thing renderable here is that teapot, the particles, the teapots and the particles, and this box with no lighting.
Okay.
So yeah, probably not a great. So one of the things about just a regular deflector is, you know, it doesn't render, right? So, but I can change its size. So maybe I can make it a little wider this way. Okay. What if I just put a plane down over it, right? It'll look like it's, you know, being bounced off of this plane. I'm gonna make it a little shorter so I can select them. And I don't need so many steps. Okay. So at least now, when I render it, it's way too bouncy anyway, but should see a little bit more. Now I get some light bouncing off the floor, so now I can see the underside of the box. There it goes. You might also notice, this isn't perfect because some of the teapots look like they're in the floor, and indeed they are. It's really just using the base point, right? The pivot point of each of these articles to see when they're bouncing. So there's some, you know, that's usually not that big of a deal because the particles are moving pretty quickly, doesn't have, you can't really tell. So good. All right, so far so good.
Working on it.
Okay, okay.
I'm messing with the gravity right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't do, oh yeah, there are some parameters for gravity, but I wouldn't mess with them. The strength at 1 is normal, right? I mean, if this was the moon or something, maybe you would lower.
Well, I had the strength at 1, but it wasn't making it up to my my plane or my box that I was trying to get it to deflect on. It was just the particles were like going up and just immediately almost falling down.
So yeah, same here. And so what I did is I just increased the speed of the particles.
Speed of the particles, okay.
Yeah. Not that you can't reduce the gravity, but it is set to be sort of natural, the same as on Earth. So that's the default anyway. But yeah, go ahead and play with it. You know, stronger or weaker gravity.
I'm looking for speed on the super spray. I'm not finding speed.
It's in the particle generation rollout.
Particle generation.
Right under the quantity.
Okay, here we go. So I found.
I have it highlighted in my screen. So
Let's see your screen. Particle motion. Okay. Speed.
Yeah.
I found it. Okay. So you have yours at what? Like, okay, 20.
And
Mine's at 10 right now.
yeah, and so you're seeing, I don't even know how big any of this stuff is. Like my floor is like 1,000 by 1,000 now. And the particles, you know, the particles themselves are like, how big are they? If I scroll down, I can see size, they're 5 units. So the teapots are 5 in size.
Okay.
Okay, so what do we do now? Let's do, well, any other questions though? Are we okay?
I just want to work on put the deflector really quick on just so it bounces off the ground. See that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I wanted to change the bounce on the ground and put some friction on it because they're sliding all over the place, right? So I'm gonna knock the bounce down to maybe 0.4-ish, something, and a little variation, maybe 20%, and some good friction going on, so they kind of slow down. Goes up to 100%, so I don't know, 28, 30. Let's see what that is. Now, I really should have put my slider back to 0, so I didn't have any particles going on yet. But there we go. So now if I look, you can see in the front view, let's just maximize that. I can just kind of scrub my time. And notice also, so they're not bouncing as high as they were, and they slow down a bit once they hit the floor. So that's nice. So, good. Just gonna do something else. Oh yeah, the spawn. Forgot about that. Okay, what I wanted it to do, perhaps, is when it hit the floor, it also grew more teapots. So that's fun. So let's see, spawn on collision. See, now here's the problem. That's all I get, right? I can't tell. That's just if it collides with something, right? And so they're going to hit this box first. And so I don't really, and they're going to hit, well, depends on how many spawns it can do. So I think if I put 2 spawns, it can hit the box and hit the floor and spawn each time. And then put a multiplier. So it'll spawn 3 teapots at each collision. And we can put a direction chaos and put 90%. And a speed chaos, 50, not as much. Scale chaos, so they can be different sized teapots when they interact. So okay. Lifespan value Q. You can, I'm not even sure. I'm gonna leave that blank. I think we're already good to go here. Zoom back out and see what's going on. Okay, so when they hit, they should spawn more particles, and so we can see them multiplying. They're dying too, but let's render that. Zoomed out a little bit. It's going to be a bit more to render. Yeah, there we go. Lovely. All right. We're good? let's try some more ideas. So I'm going to go back to, kind of want to just delete that super spray. I have some, yeah, I'm going to delete the super spray. I still have gravity in the scene. It's not bound to anything now because they were only bound to the super spray was what was bound to it. And this U deflector, which is now that still has the box as its object. So all I got to do is bind the 3 deflectors, right? The U deflector, which is used in the box, the regular deflector, which is the floor, and then I have gravity. Okay, there's other forces though that make it nice. How do I want to do it? Let's just use a sphere. And I'll just put the sphere where that super spray sort of was, I guess. And I'll pick it up, move it up a little bit. Okay. Good. So this is just an object, right? But there's let's look at some super particle systems here. The one snow, blizzard, and spray are all very similar in that, and cloud are similar, but they're just kind of presets for those kinds of systems, I guess. However, particle array is nice. I want to go over that one. So super spray, snow, blizzard, and P cloud, all pretty much, although P cloud, yeah, it's just a box with a cloud. Anyway, particle array is a little bit different in that it uses an object to generate the particles. Okay, so let's look at what it is. So I'm just going to put it somewhere. It's just a box. And we're going to choose its object as the sphere as the object. So there's a pick object box button in the parameters, and I'll pick the sphere. Okay. Then we're going to produce the particles all over the surface of this. Oh, yeah, I'm already. So what we can see is that particles are being sprayed or emitted from the sphere. Okay. It looks like they're being generated, I said over the surface, but it looks like it's kind of hard to tell. But it looks like they're being generated at the center. But if I put the speed, let's see, where's the speed? I'm going to put the speed down to 0. Okay, so now they're just being generated, and indeed they are all over the surface here. Okay. But my idea here is I'm going to start emitting at 0, and I'm going to end at 1. So in one frame, it has all the particles built up. And instead of a rate, which it uses by frame, I'm just going to use a total, and let's just do 300. Okay, so at frame 1, that's all the particles. Now, it doesn't look like there's 300 here, right? And that's because somewhere in here, there's a setting for what it displays on the screen, and it's usually set to about 10%. Yeah, viewport display. Right now, I'm displaying them as ticks, and I'm only displaying 10% of them, right? So here's 100% of them. There's all 300, right? So I'll put it back down to 10. Okay, and so I put the speed to 0, and I'm generating all the particles in one frame, and I'll set their life to maybe 50 frames so we can see a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. And okay, so why am I doing this? So let's go to particle type. And here's a different, so we have all the same ones, but now there's another one called object fragments. So I'm going to pick that. And so what it's doing now is it's taking this object and it's breaking it up into parts, right? So let's add the speed to it now. So if I increase the speed, you can see how far it comes off from it. So I can actually animate some sort of like explosion. I could have this thing just blow up, right? So let's look at that. So right now the speed's at 0, right? So they're just going to get all, actually, I'm going to have them generate at frame 15 instead of 0 to 1, and I'll show you why. Okay, and let's start, where am I? Let's start at 15 and stop at, well, with, they'll stop at 15. So right here, they all get generated at frame 15. Good. Okay, good. And their chunks, number of chunks, all faces. I think I'd rather do a number of chunks and a minimum of 300. And rotation and collisions, all good. Random, that's good. Okay, so now they should get more random generation of particles there, just over the surface of this sphere. Okay, so the reason I put the speed down to 0, I have it generating the particles that I want, but now I'm going to add a force to move them. So instead of using the speed, I'm going to add a space warp, and under forces, there's already gravity, which is going to be a part of it, but here's a P-bomb. So I'm going to put, now the positioning of this force actually matters, right? The gravity, it didn't matter where you put it, it just affects over the whole world. And this does too, but its position actually matters. So here's this nice bomb. Okay, and I think the size actually matters too. So I'm going to center that P-bomb very close to the center of this object. And I'm going to have it center below it, and then we'll adjust it as needed. So okay. All right, so let's bind this stuff together. I haven't bound anything to this particle array yet, so let's do that. Once I bind it to the gravity, it's going to fall, right? So we'll see what that does. So here's the particle array. Drag that to gravity. Okay, and just doing that, I'm going to drag it there. See them fall? So they get created, and then gravity is just producing them, right? So that's okay, because I have this bomb going on. So I'm going to drag from there to the bomb. And I also want to drag to the floor. It's a regular, oh, that's the box actually. Now I'm gonna have to use the top view for the, is that the, I don't want to bind it to the, is that the plane? Yeah, this is the deflector. Okay. Okay, so now it's bound to, in fact, if you're not sure, you can look at what they're bound to. So I have it bound to gravity, the bomb, the U deflector, and the deflector. So that's all of it. What else do I, oh, let's look at the settings for this bomb, right? So we have a force, we have the start time, it's at 30. That's not going to quite work because my particles are being generated at 15. So I'll have it start at 15 and for a duration of 1 frame and a strength of 1. Let's see what that does first. And sphericals, cylindrical, planar. I like planar, but let's look at spherical first and just scrub it and see what we get. So 15, I got the particles, and then it blows them up. Not a lot of strength, but there they go. Let's up the strength just a bit, maybe 1.5. Okay, that was enough that was quite a bit more. And so it comes off and hits the deflector and bounces around the floor. Let's look at this frame, render it. So now they're just chunks, they're pieces of the sphere. A little too uniform also, I think. I don't think is there a chaos? Yeah. Blast symmetry. Okay, I probably don't want, let's try 5. No, it only goes up to 100%. Let's just re-render that and see if I get a little bit different. Yeah, a little bit. There's not a lot that you can do with that. Let's try planar here. Oh, it's still rendering. Okay. Yeah, so that chaos doesn't help a lot at all. So it's taking that sphere and blasting it up, and gravity is kind of taking a little bit of effect, so it's a little bit flatter than normal because it's trying to pull it down. But that chaos is not helping. I might be able to play with the range instead of put it at exponential and tone down the range quite a bit. I don't think this is going to help me too much. 20. Let's just render that and see what I do. Yeah, not enough. So, but maybe successfully didn't get it as symmetric. Let's see. Let's go 250. That's a quarter of what it was. Yeah, less strength, gravity is having more of an effect. Yeah, not so great. Let's do one more thing to illustrate the particle bomb. Let's put it back on spherical and move it. So the lower I get it, oh, and I want it on linear. So, and then up its range. So yeah, that chaos just doesn't do much good. You're not going to get away from having too much variation in the symmetry of the explosion, but it's going to act fast enough maybe to make that work. Okay, so maybe I'll render frame 0 to 55 on that. What else? Let me up the range back to 1,000. That's good. Not bad, not bad. Put some sound effects on that, maybe all right. Let's see. I'm going to put a daylight system on this and render it and see what it looks like. What should we talk about before I go down a rabbit hole with all this? But this is the basics of putting forces on particle systems and making particle systems work. Any questions or comments up to this point? Okay. All right. So let's look at I think, okay, I'm going to take off the bomb, and I'm just going to look at the particle array and use its, okay, I can delete the bomb binding also on it, just in the modify panel, and look at the particle array, and it's, and maybe I can make the speed of the particle system with its variation be a little bit more realistic. Although a bomb does affect everything all at once, so maybe that is realistic, but let's just see what we can do with speed. So as far as the emit, start, and stop, it's still at 15 frames, and so I just use a high speed, maybe, let's try 100. And with a variation of 45%, and a good divergence, maybe 35 degrees. All right, let's just scrub through that and see what it is. Oh, that's pretty good, pretty good. Maybe a little too fast. Let's try 50. Nice. Much more violent. And if I look at the much more variation in that. So let's knock the speed down just a little bit more, maybe to 30. Yeah, we can see that the variation in the particles is a lot better. Nice. Okay. Yeah, put some materials, some sound, have a nice little system there. What's also nice is, I think I have time. Yeah, I got 15 minutes. One nice thing is thinking of the teapot. Let's see. What if you were to, well, we can actually address that in another time. Yeah, particle systems. Yeah, I think maybe a better way to go here is introduce the last particle system here, and that's the PF source. That's the most powerful of them all. It's a little more complicated, but also maybe even more intuitive. So let's take out this particle system here. And I can maybe reproduce the same thing here with the particle PF source. So I'll just go ahead and click it and add it to the scene. Acts a little differently, but not that. It's just this plane sitting on the ground. Maybe I'll lift it up so I can see it a little bit better. What's it doing? It's just spraying out in an area. Now, the spray and the snow and the blizzard all will act over an area rather than the super spray at a point source. So that's a slight difference as well. And so does the PF source. However, it has a lot more to offer here. So I'm just going to leave it here and go to the modify panel and particle view. This is where most of the work happens in this. Now, you can click on particle view or hit 6 on the keyboard. It's so common that a 6 on the keyboard will open up particle view scene. And this is where we're going to get, just change the size here. There's a lot of things we can do with this. Okay. This is more of a flow chart of how the particle gets generated and its parameters. So I don't see the parameters in the modify panel, so I have to come here for it. So can everybody see that panel? Can everybody see the particle view? I'm not sure that the sharing is actually.
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Thanks. All right, so what's happening here is it's a flow chart basically. So we have this geometry being rendered, and it goes down to the birth, right? So the birth parameters, if I click on it, shows me what's going on. I don't think I can change the size of that over here, so that's all right. So here's where it starts and stops. So let's see if I can make it 15 to 15. And the amount, I think I had it at 300, so 300. And gives me a total, right? Subframe sampling, that means in between frames, it'll sample it as well. So it's a little more accurate, a little smoother animation. Position, right now it's just on the volume of the emitter, right? So you can lock on the emitter. So if you're animating the emitter, it will move with it, which would look weird. But it could be that you have a fire truck running down the road with it spraying or something, I guess. Then you have the speed now, and the rotation and the shape and the display. Okay, so that's the viewport display of it. So and we have more parameters in here. So we have 3D and 2D objects. We have quite a few to choose from. So there's more options with this as well. But where the real power comes from is down here in the depot, the tool depot down here, where they're color coded. So we have a whole lot of different ways that these particles can be birthed, right? So right now there's just a simple time birth operator on it. These are operators down here, most of them. And then we have some, the blue ones are just tools or not conditions. The yellow ones are conditional kinds of parameters. So we can have a delete. So if we could, well, I'll just show you. So I'm going to drag a delete out here. So here's another operator called delete. So it's not connected to it or anything. So don't worry, your particles aren't going to get deleted yet. My mouse is acting weird. Okay. But what if I do a collision test, right? So collision, just put it down here at the bottom. And if it collides with something, such as a deflector, like click add, and is that my U deflector? So the box. How about the, well, yeah, let's just use the box. So there it is, U deflector. So if it hits the box, I can have them. So I drag the output. What's it going to do? It's going to come over here and delete. And selected particles only, or all particles. So let's see what that does. Oh, and well, that's not going to help much because they're not going to hit the deflector at all because they're coming out, they're being spewed out of the emitter itself. So I got to change that as well. So that's something in here. Gotta find it. Position object. This positions the, yeah, I think I want that rather than icon. So I'm going to click and drag that position object. Not in between, I'm going to put it and replace the position icon. So now it's on position object, and I can add the object. So that'll be the sphere. So just by doing that, by using a different position operator, the particles are now being generated from the sphere. Kind of like what we had it before with the U, the particle array, right? The P array particle system. So we can do just about everything that all the other particles can do with just this one. So there it is. It has no forces on it, right? It has no speed, things like that. So speed along icon arrow. Yeah, well, it's going down. So what if I just bind it to some sort of force or something? Speed by surface, it'll come out of the surface. That's not bad. What do I want? Yeah, I'm going to put a force on it and then go back to that bomb. Or I could do it by speed by position object, was that it? surface is good. Is there another speed by surface? Let's see what that speed by surface does. Before I delete the one, I'm just going to put it in here and see what I get. Speed by surface and surface geometry. Again, that could be some other geometry as well. I don't think I want that. So let's remove. Yeah, let's remove the speed and just add a force. That would probably be just as good. So I'm going to add a force here. And I'm going to add the P-bomb back to there's, let's move that up a little bit. Okay, and then add that. And there's my P-bomb as the force. I probably need to add the gravity also, though, huh? There's my gravity as a force. So I have two forces, the bomb and the gravity. So that should work. Slide, see what's going on. All right, that bomb needs a little work. Strength. Doesn't look like, let's see. Six. Gravity is working, but the bomb is not. The bomb is not, oh, so gravity is the only thing working on that. A particle bomb is not. Maybe, let's put that back to 1,000. And I wonder if there's two things I'm thinking. One is the particle bomb's strength needs to be in range of the gravity, which I don't think it's the problem. I think the problem is the position of the bomb needs to be over the particle system rather than the sphere, but yeah. So that's not it. Let's move the bomb to the particle system. Doesn't seem like that would work. Nope. I don't think it needs to be bound. I don't think I can bind it. Yeah, I don't think that source. Let's move to. Well, and it wasn't really under that anyhow. There's gravity, that's the deflector. Oh, there it is. So it wasn't under it anyway. Okay, now it's under it. Let's just see. Didn't think so. Still not. We'll see if it works on the floor. So I'm going to add another force. Actually, those deflectors are, it needs a collision. So I'm going to add another collision after this. And that collision is just the regular deflector. And that way, at least they won't fall through the floor, hopefully. So they just fall to the floor here. So why isn't that particle bomb working? Anyway, did I not bind it? It is bound. It's still not working. Let me take that off. That may be a glitch. Anyway, I'll have to look into it. Anyway, we are out of time. Sorry about that. So we'll pick it up again on Wednesday, and we'll go over a few more things that you can do with particles or multiple objects. And so we'll go with that. So any questions, comments?
Yeah, I needed help rendering out my last project. I screwed it up somehow with the settings, and I did it as active time segment, but it just put 150 frames on my desktop. Like separately. It didn't render it out as like one video.